Hello. As you can imagine, I had a lot of free time on my hands in the last couple of years and started to build subsystems for a Class B RV I want to convert from a cargo van. A major component for an RV is the toilet. Due to the extremely high prices of a commercial composting toilet, I decided to build one from scratch. I had to first build a vacuum former to make the urine diverter. I want to share what I learned from building the vacuum former. Unfortunately, vehicle prices have increased by 25% at least, and it seems it will be at least several more years before the prices comes down. Rather than wait to get a big van, we actually put some of the subsystems in a minivan and drove it across the country earlier in the summer. Before I get into details on lessons learned, I'd like to give a brief intro on how my vacuum former was constructed. So basically at the top, we have the heating box. The outer box is fabricated from half-inch particle board. And lined to the particle board is a half-inch cement board. So the top portion of the cement board is lined with fiberglass insulation. Heat is provided by 5 helical heating coils. So the coils were purchased from Amazon, and they were shortened slightly to a resistance of about 25 ohms to increase the heat output. So at the time of installation, the springs were stretched, so there was plenty of tension to hold the spring up, as shown on the right hand side. The workpiece is fixed onto a metal frame. The metal frame was fabricated from a salvaged T-beam from a garage door opener. So the frame is welded to square tubes that is guided by 2 hardwood studs. The workpiece at the top is actually fixed in place by a wooden frame placed on top of the metal frame. On the inside edge of the metal frame, it's supposed to be aligned so that they sit on top of the blue box to provide a seal. The actual vacuum table is fabricated from half-inch particle board. Someone on YouTube suggested particle board a perfect material for vacuum former. And at the time, I was new to this, so I followed his advice. Unfortunately, as you will shortly see, that did not work well. First try with particle board vacuum box. Turned on the shop vac. Turning on the vacuum tank, but nothing happens. It is clear opening the vacuum tank did not increase the vacuum level since the edges are not well formed. It took me a while to figure that the particle board are essentially porous to air. I came to the conclusion after control test where a piece of half-inch particle board was connected to the pipe flange sealed with silicone. Even with such small surface area under the flange and a large vacuum tank, the pressure increase is very fast. I did a similar test with wood. There was no significant pressure change after similar time exposure. So, if you want to use a vacuum tank, do not use particle board for the vacuum table. It is okay if you only use in the shop vac because the removal rate is very fast. A second thing to keep in mind is to have more support for the heating coils. When fresh, there was quite a bit of tension, but after a couple of uses, the coil became quite loose and was flapping around. 2 of my coils actually came in touch with each other and fused together. The last thing I want to comment on is the sealing at the edge, where the edge of the table mates with the edge of the framing holding the workpiece. I went to great length to have a small contact area at the edge. In practice, it may not be necessary as the workpiece did not show a bend near the edge. I think as long as the sheet exerts some pressure at the edge, the vacuum pull should pull the sheet down for self-sealing. On the finished toilet, the design goal was to make it as small as possible, and I had intended to vacuum form a custom-sized bucket, but the 2 by 2 feet vacuum former was not large enough. At the time, I had already made the wooden frame and was fortunate to find a laundry soap container that fit perfectly inside the wooden frame. Well, everything worked great at the end on the composting toilet. We installed a steering device in the bucket that can be turned by a ratchet so that we did not have to manually add composting material. The toilet was used on a 2-week trip with absolutely no smell. Well, except for small malfunction on one of the days where the ventilation hose came loose.